Hi guys, today I want to talk about territory war, as well as some hopeful, useful hints and tips about things that you can do that'll hopefully help you get a better score. So when you first get the territory score, this is what you'll get. This is the preview screen. And if we just go in here, you'll be able to see all the different members from your guild that have signed up. And it's important to remember that you need at least 25 to be able to play the territory war. You'll need to click join, but I'm just going to leave because I'm already signed up, and you'll get this button. And you click that and it lets you join in. Now, one of the advantages of having the leave button is that when you join, it's just like Grand Arena. So the game takes a shot of your roster and that's what you use, and it will not change if you update everything. However, if you click leave, you can wait a few seconds and then click join again, and it'll reset your roster image. So it'll allow you to use any characters that you've just upgraded. Now, once you've joined, you'll get taken to the main sort of battle screen. And on the left side in blue, that's your defense, and the right, which is in red, is the enemy's defense. Now, you won't be able to see what the enemy guild is or what their defense is until the next phase. So looking at my defense, I can see that what banners I get as well as any guild orders. So this squad's at 85k is an order that we've put down. Our typical approach is that we mark zones with a minimum GP for what we want players to put down. Now, there are numerous different approaches you can take in terms of that, and it'll vary from guild to guild. Now, what you're going to want is you're going to want your stronger defense at the front. And the reason for this is that if they can't go through your front, everything at the back is just dead space. So you don't want to be stacking really good teams at the back if you don't need to. Now, this is going to vary depending on how powerful the opposing guild is. So our standard is we've got 85k on the front four and on the middle, 65k on the breast, and then the fleets are at 250. And that's kind of a standard we've run for a while, and it's worked really well for us. Now, as our guild has grown, we have of course increased those quotas. As this is the preview phase, you can't actually deploy anything yet. You can just look at the orders that your guild's given. As an officer, I can actually change those and issue new orders to everybody else. So I could set a message or like the focus engagement command or whatever. But that's pretty much all you can do in this phase. So we'll move on to the next one. So this is the setup phase, which is the second phase. And you get 24 hours in which to deploy all of your deployments, just as you would with Grand Arena. So we'll just jump into this and I'll show you what this looks like. So you can see here that the zones have started to be filled up, and my guild's filled up some of these with their various squads, and hopefully they're all paying attention to the power allowance that we've set. Now, one very important thing to realise is that once a player has deployed a squad, that's it. You can't remove it, and it's the same in Grand Arena. Even the guild officers can't do anything about it. So if somebody puts a bad squad down, you're stuck with it. So your guild really needs to have a good level of communication and get your guys to really work together in order to put down a good defense, because one rogue player can actually screw you. Now, every guild's going to have a different strategy, and what you may find is that a lot of guilds put down walls of the same team, and that's something that we really need to cover, and you'll probably see that when we go into the next phase as well. And the way that works is that they basically mark a zone and say just put First Order or just put Jedi Knight Revan or whatever they want to put down. And that as a strategy has like a varying level in which it works. I kind of find that a lot of people have adopted this strategy and they don't necessarily understand how this strategy is meant to work. What you're meant to get out of this is that if you put a wall down of a powerful team, your opponents have to commit counters to that team in order to pass it successfully. So if you put down a wall such as light side Revan, a lot of opponents are going to start using up things like Darth Revan. Now, behind that Revan wall, you put something else which they need that counter for, and you might find that your opponent stumbles as they've now run out of resources. However, what I have found is that a lot of guilds will put substandard teams on. Well, they're not really substandard, but they're not teams where they're really good in territory war. So teams like First Order and Bounty Hunters can be really effective teams, but what we found is that a lot of guilds we ran into will put walls of, say, Bosk-led Bounty Hunters, And for us, we find that that's just a free win. So if you are going to use that strategy, you need to make sure that the teams you're putting down complement the rows behind or bait your opponent into some kind of trap. I think the best walls we've seen is probably Night Sisters. The only downside with that though is that when the guild splits between Talzin and Ventress lead, you really just want to stick with Talzin lead, because as soon as people make slip-ups, the Night Sisters come out at full ahead. So what we'll do is we'll jump forward to the next phase and you'll be able to see what goes on there. Right, so this is part 3 of the territory war. This is the attack phase. Go in and have a look. So it's already started, and usually you'll find some players will jump in straight away, but really what you want is you want your guild to like coordinate. So I'm just gonna stick a focus engagement here to tell my guys to go and attack the north. And yeah, usually you just look at the front and see what your opponents put down. So this guild likes to use team walls. So we've got Revan, and there's a couple of Grievous teams, and Empire. So it's kind of a Revan wall. And then down here we've got another wall. It's the Padme Darth Revan wall. And then up here we've got another wall. It's the Geo wall. Now, as I said before, I don't think walls of squads are very good unless you're using them for a very specific tactic. So putting geos down is probably a good tactic against guilds that don't have things like Treya, or they don't have lots of other teams that are going to be really good against them. But any guild that's got things like Treya is just going to go through that wall no problem, because as long as they've not loaded their defense with Darth Treya, which most guilds won't, you'll be able to sort of 3v5 all of those geo teams and take that zone really easily. I think that with this guild, if they'd have stacked a different set of teams with where their Revan is, and then moved their Revan back to the other zone, they could have tried to deprive us of teams that would have been good against their Revan teams and made those matchups a lot harder for us. Now, in order to score the most points, what you need to do is you need to clear entire zones. You get a massive bonus of points for clearing a whole zone. So it's worth your guild focusing on one zone and just getting rid of that one at a time. Of course, if you look at a zone and it's got a defensive team in it that you think is too tough, so for example on our zone, we've got a Relic Gas team on north and south. Now a lot of guilds are going to struggle against that if they're not top end guilds. So by putting that there, we can really deprive them. And if they don't think that they can beat that team, sometimes it's better that you should say, well, we should go for the other zone, or we're going to have to use multiple squads to beat this, and it really pays to have a good strategy. One of the things that you need to realize about this event is it works like Grand Arena, in that if you attack a squad and you don't beat it, you leave it with turn meter. So that makes it much harder for the next person who attacks that squad. Now, if you know that you can't beat a squad, what you need to do is plan your strategy. So for example, against Gas, you might go in and say, first player needs to kill Rex so that 5 sacrifices, and then it doesn't matter if he loses, because the next player who goes in is going to have much an easier time about it. The only thing that you need to think about in terms of your attack strategy is which route you're going to take. Typically it's better to go for north over south, because on the north there are 2 fleet zones at the top. And what that means is that you need a lot less characters in order to clear the top 6 zones. On top of that, if you don't get to those fleet zones, you've got a load of fleets that are just going to be sitting there in your guild roster, unable to be used. So in order to get the most points, you really need to go north. Now, one strategy we have seen before is where the opposing guild loaded South 1 with a really kind of like a load of budget teams. They didn't want to make it look too weak, but we sniffed it out straight away that it was a trap, and we cleared the zone using our crapper teams to find that South 2 was actually loaded with really powerful squads. And a lot of players, when they jump into things like this, automatically use their best squads. So when you're attacking, what you want to do is look for squads that are really powerful, but you can beat them. You want to beat the best squad you can for your guild. So if you've got like a 130,000 power squad you don't want to be using that to beat an 88,000 power squad, because your squad should be, you know, so much more powerful that you want to use that on a squad that is, you know, worth that. You know what I mean? If you're using these really expensive squads on these low squads, you're gonna run out of steam, because you're basically wasting the potential of your roster. And I know with some teams that it's harder to do than others, and sometimes you have to. Some teams trade up. I find that Geos are one of those squads where unless you're using Treya, Geos are pretty much a sort of a trade up team. But as soon as you've got Treya, Geos trade down, like every time. Getting your guild to play is kind of the big deal. You just need to keep putting messages in your chat, whether that's on Discord or the in-game chat. Remind players when new zones open so they can go back and see if they've got things in their roster that they can use on those zones. That's kind of like a big thing. You don't want your guild to sort of like take one look at it and go, oh, I can't do any more, and then that's it, they don't play. Anyway, I think that's about it. If you guys have got any questions, please leave them in the comments.